This is Call of Cthulhu. It's a cosmic horror-based tabletop role-playing game, and it's one of my all-time favorites. I'm super excited because I just started a new campaign, and I thought it would be really cool to make a set of dice for it. However, Call of Cthulhu is a bit different from a classic D20 system. How so? Well, if we take a look at a character sheet, and the book here gives a good example one to use, we can see each skill has a number between 0 and 99, like 70, 50, 65 for example. So if we wanted to persuade an NPC, the keeper would ask us to roll a persuade check. Rather than a d20, we would roll 2d10 and try to get under our score. In this case, we got a 69, which is just barely under our persuade score, meaning we would succeed on our check. So I thought it would be really cool to make a pair of D10s. These are two really beautiful pieces of Moonstone that I think will work great for these dice. There's a bit of a difference in size, so we're going to start off with the smaller one first so we can establish a maximum size. But before we can begin, we need to get them on the daub. We're using our trusty Loctite 5-min epoxy resin for this, as it sets up pretty quickly and creates a super strong bond. While that cures, let's head over to the computer and put together a design. This is Gem Cut Studio. Over here on the left we have our cutting instructions, a 3D model of the stone, and a render down here on the bottom. On the right we have our cut depth control, which we can use to start cutting into the stone, as well as angle control and index rotation up here at the top. A D10 has 5 main facets on each side, so we'll need an index wheel that is divisible by that number. In this case, our standard 80 index wheel will work great. We'll start off by setting our symmetry to 5, and then we can start cutting using our depth slider. When we have that where we want it, we can click cut to confirm, and then we'll swap to the crown and repeat. On the second half of the stone, we're going to rotate the index so we're cutting the faces at an offset. And here's a basic starting shape. However, I like steeper shard cuts for these style of dice, so we're going to make some adjustments. Starting off, we can adjust the angle of the cut to something a bit steeper. About 55 degrees looks pretty good, so we're going to do that and we're going to click cut to confirm. Then we'll switch to our crown and do the same thing. This is a really good start, but I think we can make it a bit nicer with a few extra cuts, starting with some stars on the points. We're going to make sure we're offset from the main facets, then we'll grab an angle that's just a bit lower than that. 40 degrees looks nice. We'll bring the cut into where we want it, and then we'll click cut to confirm. And there we go. Then we're going to do the same thing on the second half. Lastly, I think we should add some cuts around the girdle of the stone to get a nice design that matches the stars. By setting our angle to 90 degrees and increasing our symmetry to 10, we can rotate the index and get these really nice triangles on each edge. These will help protect the girdle of the stone and also give us a really nice design feature. And here's the full design. I think it looks pretty nice, and you can see it a bit better in the render below. So now we're just going to export the design and print it, and then we'll get working. With the design done and our resin cured, we can finally get started on cutting. Moonstones are a silicate member of the feldspar group, which you might know from labradorite. They've got this really amazing shimmering effect called schiller, or labradorescence. This is caused by light diffracting off of the microscopic layers within the stone. Now, feldspar is pretty tough, scoring around 6 to 6.5 on the most hardness scale, but we still need to be careful since it can split in certain directions if we cut it wrong. So for feldspar, we'll be running through a gamut of laps, starting with our 120 grit to get the rough shape, followed by a 240 grit to cut through the damage caused by the 120, then a 600 to refine the shape further and cut in all the stars. From there, we'll move to our 3000 grit pre-polish lab, then finally on to our Spectra Ultra lab with cerium oxide mixture for polishing. So, let's get cutting. Now that the rough cuts are done and the bulk of the material has been removed, we're going to pause real quick to clean both our fastening machine and our workspace. As we remove accumulated dust, we help minimize airborne particles. This cleaning step becomes particularly crucial before our pre-polishing and polishing phases. During those steps, even small dust caught on the lab can create some really nasty scratches that could cause us a ton of trouble. Taking a few minutes to clean everything now can save us a bunch of time and frustration down the line. So we're working through the 600 grit now, and I wanted to stop and show you this. I added a little bit of oil so you can see it better, and just look at how beautiful that is. Moonstones are just so pretty. Next up is to cut in the star facets on the top. An incredibly helpful trick I learned from the carpentry community is to draw on a surface that you're sanding so you know what you have and haven't worked on. This is particularly helpful in working on pre-polish because it can show us exactly where our alignment sits on the lap. Each lap is slightly different, and when we get to this stage we really need to make sure that we're dead on. So I'm just going to fill in the face with my pencil. Graphite has a super low hardness, so there's no real risk of scratching the stone. Okay, now let's do a little bit of pre-polishing and see where we sit. Here it is with no adjustments, and you can see we're cutting a bit more on the right than the left. There's a built-in way to adjust this called the index vernier, or the cheater. This allows us to very carefully adjust the index by partial degrees. So we're going to make a small adjustment to the left and pre-polish it a bit further. Here we go, and now it's all lined up. There's a little bit here below that needs some more attention, and then we'll just pre-polish the rest of the face. So I want to show you how we check the pre-polish. We're going to take the back of our pencil here and hold it close to the face aligned against the light. This is a 600 grit face, and we can see just how blurry the reflection is. Now if we switch to a face that we just pre-polished, we can see the reflection is a lot clearer. A quick look over each face like this can catch any missed spots before we move on to polishing. Here's the final polish of the first side of our first stone, and it's turning out beautifully. Now let's get the daub swapped to the other side and start on our next stone. One of the questions I'm often asked is, how do I make sure the daubs are perfectly aligned when transferring the stone? If we take a close look at one of our daubs, we can see the bottom is slanted. This means that when we place it in the transfer jig, it'll sit perfectly against this back plate. Any rotation one way or the other would be easy to catch. Once we get that into place, we can just tighten down this lock. Then, with a bit more of our Loctite epoxy resin, we can drop the stone in there and feel confident that everything is perfectly lined up. Now let's get started on our next die. We're going to run through the same strategy as the first stone. 120, then to 240, followed by 600 including the stars, then to 3K for pre-polish and ultra lap for polish. Alright, so we've gone through pre-polish on these main faces 3 times now, and you can see we're getting some pretty poor results. All of these scratches here are actually coming from this lap. I thought it may be contamination, so I ran the lap with steel wool and washed it with soap and water, but no luck. This means it's likely to just be the lap itself. This happens with topper laps. They're one of the few things that have to be continually replaced with faceting. The sucky part is that we don't have another one here in the shop, so we're going to have to wait a few days for a new one to get in. A couple of days have passed and our new 3000 polishing lap is here. Let's get it out of the package and give it another shot. And there we go. Everything went much better this time around. Immediately we have far better results. It's still a tiny bit rough because the lap is new, but that'll disappear the more we break it in. We can definitely work these out, it'll just take a little bit longer on the polishing step. Here's the first side polished, and the stone has so much depth to it that I couldn't see until now. Moonstone is just so beautiful. Before we can get this in the transfer jig, we need one of the cone dops from our other stone. Let's go pop one off real quick, and then we'll transfer the stone and pick up there tomorrow. And here are both stones fully polished, and they're absolutely perfect. They accent each other so well, and I'm so incredibly happy with how they've turned out. Now we're going to pop them in our ultrasonic cleaner real quick, then cut out some vinyl numbering masks on our CNC machine, sandblast them in, paint them, and we'll be all finished up. If you're enjoying watching these dice come to life, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons below. It only takes a second and it would really help me out. Your support helps me to continue making more content like this. When I look at these dice, I imagine Professor Marion Wells of the Miskatonic University Astronomy Department. Through her telescope, each night she maps the subtle wrongness in the stars above, strange movements that deviate from every known law of celestial mechanics. Her hands remain steady as she transcribes coordinates into her leather-bound journal, but her mind fractures further with each revelation. Between familiar constellations, she documents moving points of light that no other astronomer seems to notice. Star charts cover every surface of her office, each marked with careful annotations that grow increasingly erratic towards the margins. Her mind strains at the edges of comprehension. What she observes above suggests vastness beyond measure and a purposeful motion that insists conscious choice. The truth begins to reveal itself, mirrored in fragments, in the pattern of drops of rain on the cafe window, the spiraling of autumn leaves as they fall to the ground, and in the swirls of steam rising from her coffee. Each observation brings more clarity and more madness. The other university professors discuss her frequent absences and erratic lectures, but she barely notices their concern. Her work consumes her nights, and her dreams consume her days. She charts these stellar anomalies with increasing precision, knowing that each new discovery pushes her further from what humans were meant to comprehend. Yet she cannot stop. The patterns are too perfect, too precise, too present. And in the vast void beyond the sky above, something has begun to notice her watching.